Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Toby Talks. I'm your host, Toby Hoy, and today we need to have an honest conversation about something that I see in almost every organization that I work with. And it's probably happening in yours right now as well. We are drowning in data, seriously drowning. We have dashboards for everything, metrics coming out of our ears, and reports that could fill libraries. But here's the $1 million question. When was the last time all of that data actually helped you make a decision? I'd like to share a story with you that perfectly captures this particular conundrum. I walked into a meeting with a client. The VP of operations was sat there so proud. I'm talking kindergartner with their 14th drawing of the day proud. Puppy that just dug a huge hole in your favorite rose garden proud. Or a cat that just flopped a rodent on your pillow at 3 o'clock in the morning proud. She showed me their new dashboard, sprawled across 6 ultra-wide monitors, all perfectly mounted on the wall, were 14 differently formatted charts, all with automated real-time updates, with manual refresh capabilities on all or one. It looked like mission control at NASA. The design was truly beautiful. And then I asked her one simple question. What decision have you made because of this dashboard in the past week? She went silent, along with the rest of the room. And that silence told me everything that I needed to know. So today we're going to talk about how to stop being data collectors and start being decision makers. We're going to flip this whole thing on its head because honestly, the way that most of us are using data right now, it's not working. So let's fix that. All right. So let's start out by calling out the problem. And I want you to do something for me right now. If you're at your desk, open up your shared drive. Go ahead. I'll wait a second. Take a look at all of those folders. Third quarter analytics, sales metrics year over year, customer feedback data. Now, be honest with yourself. When was the last time that you or somebody else actually opened any of those folders? Or more importantly, when was the last time that someone made a real decision based on what's inside of those folders? We collect data because it makes us feel productive. It gives us this illusion of control, like we're on top of things. We tell ourselves that having the information is the same thing as using the information, but that's honestly garbage. Data without decisions is just digital clutter. It's the professional equivalent of keeping every receipt you've ever received just in case you might need it someday. The problem starts with how we think about data in the first place. We treat it like a trophy, something to accumulate and display. Look at all these metrics we're tracking. We must be doing amazing. But data isn't a trophy, it's a tool. And a tool that sits unused in your shed is just taking up space. Let me tell you why we do this. There are three main reasons that organizations get stuck in collection mode. The first is that we think that more data leads to better decisions. If we just had one more metric, one more report, one more way to see the numbers, we would know what to do. This is complete nonsense. More data just creates more confusion unless you know what question that you're truly trying to answer. The second reason, number two, collecting data feels safe. It feels like progress without requiring you to commit to anything. Making decisions based on data, well, that's risky. What if the data leads you wrong? What if we interpret it incorrectly? Or what if you make a bad call that doesn't work out? But hiding behind endless data collection isn't protecting you from risk. All it does is guarantee mediocrity. And number three, the third, we honestly don't know what to do with the data once we have it. Nobody taught us. We learned how to build spreadsheets or create charts and run reports. We never learned how to translate numbers into action. So we keep collecting, hoping that eventually the data will be so obvious that the decision will just make itself. Spoiler alert, it won't. So, how do we fix this? We flip the script entirely. Stop collecting data and hoping that it will tell you what to do. Instead, start with a decision that you need to make and then figure out what data would actually help you make it. Let me give you a real example. I had a client tracking employee satisfaction surveys and scores quarterly. They had years worth of data, beautiful trend lines going back forever. The scores were declining. Everyone knew it. Everyone talked about it in meetings, but nothing ever changed. Now, why? Because they never connected the data to a specific decision. So we completely restructured the approach. Instead of just measuring satisfaction and wringing our hands about, about it, we asked a different question. What decisions could we make if these scores drop below certain thresholds? The team came up with three clear options. If scores fell below 7.5 out of 10, they would immediately implement skip level meetings so that leadership could hear directly from employees. If scores dropped below 7, they would completely revise their recognition program. And if they fell below 6.5, they would conduct departmental level focus groups to identify any systemic issues. It was the same data, but a completely different approach. Now, those numbers had a job to do. They triggered specific actions. The data wasn't just existing in a report in a folder somewhere, it was driving real decisions. This is what I like to call the decision first framework. And before you collect a single data point, you need to answer three questions. So write these down or put them in the voice recorder on your phone. Question number one: what specific decision does this data point help me make? Question number two: what threshold or trend would trigger that decision? And question number three: who is responsible for making the decision when the data says it's time? If you can't answer all three of these questions clearly and specifically, you don't need that data point. What you need is to think harder about what you're actually trying to accomplish. I know this sounds simple, maybe even obvious, but I promise you, most of the data that you're collecting right now can't pass that three-question test. Try it when you get back to your desk. Pick your top 5 metrics and run each of them through those 3 questions. I would bet you at least 3 of them fail. All right, so you've now figured out what decisions your data should drive. Now we need to talk about the action triggers. This is where the proverbial rubber meets the road. This is where the data stops being theoretical and starts getting real. Take your most important metric, the one that everyone talks about in meetings, the one that's on every dashboard. And now ask yourself, at what point would this number tell you that you need to do something different? Not just, well, we should keep an eye on that, but something different. I worked with a manufacturing company a while back that tracked production defects. They had years worth of data. They knew their average defect rate and they had targets, all the usual stuff. But they only reacted when things got so bad that customers were complaining and threatening to leave. By then, they were playing complete defense, total damage control mode. So we set up graduated triggers based on their data. If defects hit 2% above the 3-month moving average, they would immediately run a team huddle to identify possible causes. At 5% above average, they'd stop the entire production line and conduct a full process review. At 8%, they'd bring in external quality consultants. Now, those were not arbitrary numbers that we pulled out of the air. They were based on analyzing their historical data to understand when problems became expensive to fix versus when they could be caught early and simply. The data now had clear roles at different levels. No more waiting around to see if things would magically just get better on their own. And here's what happened. In the first month, they triggered that 2% threshold twice. In both times, the team huddle identified small pieces of issues or process deviations and they fixed them immediately. They never hit the 5% or the 8% thresholds. The reason why is because they were catching problems early instead of waiting for disasters. That same approach works for any metric that you care about, whether it's customer satisfaction scores or sales pipeline velocity or employee turnover rates, time to market, whatever matters in your business. Pick a number, define your trigger points, and assign your actions. Data without predetermined actions is just scorekeeping, and scorekeeping doesn't win games. So let's talk about everyone's favorite topic, those data review meetings that you have. You know the ones I'm talking about. Whether they're weekly or monthly, everyone sits around a room and presents their numbers, and you look at slides and you discuss trends and you nod along and smile. And maybe somebody asks a clarifying question, and then you move on. Those meetings are usually completely useless. I know that sounds harsh, but it's true, and we all know it. They are performance theater disguised as data analysis. Real data driven meetings have a completely different structure. You don't spend the meeting presenting data, you spend it deciding what to do about the data. The difference might seem subtle, but it changes everything. Here's the format that I recommend. Send all of the data to all the people before the meeting. Everyone reads it on their own time. I know it's a revolutionary concept, but when you actually get in the room or on the Zoom call, you start with one question. Based on what we're seeing, what decisions do we need to make? And that's it. Done. You don't rehash the numbers. You don't spend 20 minutes admiring your pretty charts. You review the data and you decide. One of my clients switched to this format and cut their metric review meetings from 90 minutes down to 30. Same data, better outcomes, way better outcomes. And why? Because they stopped congratulating themselves for just having data and started using data to drive action. Your meeting agenda should look something like this. Review the 3 most critical metrics, identify any that have crossed an action threshold, decide what to do about them, assign ownership, set follow-up dates, and you're done. If you leave a data review meeting without at least one concrete decision and one person responsible for implementing it and a deadline, you have just wasted everyone's time. You may as well have just sent an email with a chart attached and saved yourself the hour. I want you to think about your next data review meeting. How would it change if you applied this approach? What would you cut out? What would you focus on instead? Try it just once. See what happens. Okay, so we need to stop and address something because I know that some of you are thinking it right now. What if the data isn't perfect? What if we don't have enough information yet? What if we make the wrong decision? Now, here's the truth, and this is important. You will never, ever have perfect information, ever. The pursuit of perfect data is just another form of decision avoidance. You tell yourself that you're being thorough, but really you're just stalling. Good decisions don't require perfect data. They require sufficient data, plus the courage to act. And here's the kicker that nobody wants to hear. Making a decision with 70% of the information that you wish you had is usually way better than making no decision while you hunt for the other 30%. Think about it this way. Your competitors aren't sitting around waiting for perfect data either. They're making calls based on what they know right now. While you're sitting around collecting more metrics and running more analyses, they are testing and learning and adjusting. Speed beats perfection in almost every competitive scenario. Now, this doesn't mean to be reckless. I'm not telling you to make gut decisions and ignore your data. What I'm saying is that data is meant to reduce uncertainty, not eliminate it. If you have enough information to make an informed decision, then make it. Then use more data to validate your decision and make any adjustments if needed. That is actual data-driven decision making, not collecting data until you feel 100% certain. That day will never come. So let's wrap this up with some homework. I want you to do something this week. I want you to go through every metric that you currently track, every single one, and ask yourself those three decision first questions that we talked about earlier. What specific information or decision does this help me make? What threshold triggers that decision? And who owns the decision? If you can't answer clearly, stop tracking that metric. I'm serious. Delete it from the dashboard. Remove it from the reports. You'll probably eliminate about 60% of what you're currently measuring. And before you panic, that's a good thing. That 60% is costing you time and attention and mental energy without delivering any value. For the metrics that make the cut, document your decision triggers, write them down and share them with the team. Make them visible. When the data crosses a threshold, everyone should know exactly what happens next. No discussions about whether we should do something. That decision was already made. Now you just execute it. Here's the thing about competitive advantage in today's world. Everyone has data now. Every company can build dashboards. Every organization can track metrics. Access to data isn't special anymore. What separates the winners from the losers is how quickly you can turn data into decisions and decisions into action. So think about a company like Amazon. Their real advantage isn't their data infrastructure, although that's legit impressive. It's their decision velocity. They see something in the data, they decide, they act, they measure, they adjust. No, the whole cycle happens in sometimes hours or days, not months or quarters. You can have that same advantage. You don't need Amazon's tech budget, although that would certainly help. You just need to stop treating data collection as the end goal and start treating it as the beginning of a decision process. The data that you already have is enough. You don't need more tools. You don't need better dashboards. You need to stop collecting and start deciding. So here's my challenge to you this week. Pick one metric this week, just one. Apply the decision first framework to it. Define your thresholds and assign your actions. And when that metric crosses a threshold, execute on your predetermined response. No debates, no discussions. You've already decided, and now you just act. Try it for me and see what happens. And then come find me on social media and tell me about it. I would love to hear your stories. So that's it for today's episode. As always, thanks for listening to Toby Talks. If you found this helpful, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And I'll see you next time.